Hello, Bremen. Hello, Ty. Thank you. Just for a visit. Kind of want to use the mic. Yeah, I didn't tell my brother that I was coming home for the weekend, and I called him yesterday morning and said, "Hey, I'm in Bremen." He said, "Why?" I said, "I'm just visiting. It's okay. I didn't get kicked out yet. Again." I want to thank the elders for letting me speak tonight. It is really good to be in Bremen. You know, I'm really grateful for this congregation. What I want to say is that Bremen is the best congregation there is. Except Johnny, a while back we had a conversation and he said I couldn't say that anymore because it sounds like what I'm saying is that Bremen is better than the congregation down the road or one that's across the state or in the northern hemisphere. So I figured out a loophole. I can say Bremen is my favorite congregation and let people think what they want to think. But Bremen is the best congregation. We're here I'm here tonight to talk about the mission trip that we went on in this past summer. The five of us, Stephanie and Ashlyn Hodges, Cindy Karras, Chad, myself, we went to Nicaragua, and this congregation supported us in doing that, financially, spiritually, prayers, well wishes. But before I do that, I want to talk about preacher school for a little bit, just a few minutes. Don't panic. I got it. I am currently in preacher school in Memphis School of Preaching. Talked to Chad about it for about a year before I went, and he told me two things. He said it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your life, and you're going to love it. And I'd always say, "Yeah, Chad, yeah, Chad, yeah." And I didn't believe him. I mean, you know, it's Chad. I'm thinking it can't be that hard. Well, I mean, and this has no reflection on him being from Alabama or anything, you know. It is. It's the hardest. It's hard. First few days, I almost quit every day. But I would call people and tell them, "Hey, I can't do this," and they'd say, "Yes, you can. Yeah, just don't." And a couple of weeks ago, on a Saturday morning, we got up and one of our classmates had left just in the middle of the night. He quit. And that day I made a decision. I'm not quitting. They may drag me out of there, but I'm not quitting. And since that time, well, the first week, we have tests every day. We have some kind of quiz every day. And the first week I wasn't doing good, but now I'm doing better because I'm studying differently or studying better or studying all the time, 5 or 6 hours a day. I have 6 classes. Genesis, class Exodus and Leviticus, class over Matthew, one in English. Can't remember my classes now. Bible geography, that's a really interesting class, and homiletics. I didn't know what homiletics was either, so I had to look it up. It's the art of preaching. Teaches us how to make a sermon, how to memorize different verses, and a lot of memory work. My second year, because I'm still going to be there because I'm not quitting. My first quarter of my second year, I have to memorize and recite the book of James. So I'm looking forward to that. I am. The Bible classes, we go through that book, and we go verse by verse by verse, and that's how it should be. And it's hard. And I appreciate, I get messages from people on Facebook and text messages, and I appreciate that stuff because I need it. Mark 16:15, and he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Well, that's the Great Commission. I'm going to try to. Yeah, you can see it. That's the Great Commission. It's a command. When we hear it, we have three choices. We have three options. We can go, we can send, or we can ignore. Like I said, there was 5 of us from this congregation that went this past summer that fulfilled our going part. This congregation and others sent us. That fulfills your sending part. Hopefully you won't ever choose that ignore part. This is the group from Broughton. We met here, then we stopped and picked up Cindy, and I think that was it. I think that was at some beauty shop where we picked her up. We went to Atlanta, flew to Managua, Nicaragua. Took about 5 hours. We got there at night. We went through customs, gave them our $10. They let us in the country. Just like last year, I don't know what the questions they asked me were. I just said yes, yes, and handed them my $10 and went through. And there's the water fountain that I drank out of last year. I did not drink the water this year. I just took a picture of it so you can see the offending water fountain. This is the group from Bremen and West Georgia congregations. They had a lot of people. This is the sign at the place we stayed at. The hacienda in San Marcos. They had a sign out there in Spanish that's at the bottom, Iglesia de Cristo, that says that's the Church of Christ. Welcome. That's the dining hall that we ate at. We had, if there was any kind of meeting we would meet there. That's the hacienda there. That's me. That's actually towards the end of the trip. It's tiring. Most all we do is we walk around and we find somebody to have a Bible study with, and we have a Bible study and we talk about the Bible, and it's tiring work. It's hot, it's humid, it's tiring. I don't know if you can tell up under my arm there, that's a gallon of water that I bought because it was hot. This is the inside of the church building. We went to, because there were 55 people of us this year, so there were I think there were 12 teams, and so they took 3 of those teams and they went to the congregation that we worked with last year. So we worked with both the San Marcos congregation and the Los Campos congregation. I didn't go out to Los Campos. Chad did. I'm sure he'll tell you a lot about that. But that's the inside of the San Marcos. It holds about 100 people. I think the last night there was 107. I did the count that night, so I counted pregnant women, and everything. So that's their pulpit, and you may not be able to read it, but what it says is, Jesus loves us all. Christ loves us all on that. And behind it, or actually their stage area lifts up. It's and I didn't know this when I went up to read some scripture or lead a song or something, and I stepped down too heavy on that board. It made a really loud noise. I didn't know it was under there, but the stage lifts up, and Well, as you can see there, that's their baptistry under the stage. This is their local preacher. His name is Roldan. I never could get his name right, but he's a great guy. He's a happy fellow. Abdon. See, I still didn't get it right. I don't know. He's a good guy. He's been there for a few years. That's another view of the inside of the church building there. Now, this is an alleyway kind of between the church building and the next building. And this was in the city. The area I worked with is the city. And houses are not like here. They don't have like a front yard or backyard or even a side yard. I mean, houses are a foot apart, most of them. This one's probably about 2 or 3 feet. We, going on these mission trips, we meet people from all over the world. That's on the left there, that's Cindy, Stephanie, and Miranda. On the right, that's Ashlyn and some guy. 17 people in this room know what that guy's name is. That's weird. That's Abner. Agner, yeah. He answers to a lot of stuff. He's one of the translators. These two fellas, and if you'll notice, Chad looks really confused. But if you'll look just under his chin, Stephanie's right there, and she's really confused too. I don't know what was confusing over to that area, but a lot of times when Chad talks about Costa Rica or a mission trip or something, he talks about a guy named Hayner. And that guy really does exist. That's him in the glasses there. He is from Costa Rica. He's a local preacher from that area, and he works as a translator as much as he can in other countries. They're either loading or unloading a bus that we travel on. That's Cindy and Junior on the left. Junior, she met him last year, so you go back to the same area, you see people. It's good to make those acquaintances. Two guys on the right. That's Hayner again, translating for Wade Webster. Wade's a great guy. He's also a Memphis School of Preaching graduate. He is currently at College Station congregation. He works as a full-time missionary. He's at least once a month he's going somewhere in Latin America. I think last week he was in Chile or somewhere in South America. There's so you just make friends on these trips. You put a bunch of people that are like-minded doing God's work together, and you're going to make friends. That's that guy in the middle is Elvin. I think that's his real name. I know a lot of you were worried. That picture on the right up there with Chad and Ashlyn, I know a lot of you were worried that Chad would get off somewhere and not be able to find pickles. Well, it took him about 4 or 5 days, but he found some pickles. The one on the left is Cindy and Ashlyn. There was a kind of a entertainment night on our last night in San Marcos, and they played a little joke on Ashlyn. You can ask her about that. And that's myself and Stephanie on the bottom there. I think she's showing off her dessert. That may or may not have been her second dessert. It was. This is Stephanie's team. What happens is we get everybody together. They divide up into they pick some team leaders, and then everybody starts dividing up. You have on one team that goes out, you'll have a team leader. You'll have someone, a translator. You'll have a female, a woman. If 2 guys go up to the door, knock on the door, hi, can we come in and study the Bible? She's not going to let them in. But if there's a woman with her, the chances are greater that she's going to do that. And also on the team, there's usually at least one young person, so if there's kids, they can take care of the children. And so that's Stephanie's team. It's like there's about 6 or 7 people. Well, that's Chad's. Chad's on that team too, so there you go. All the little kids. Now that's Wade Webster, but that's me. That's it. Yeah, that's our team. We only had 4 people, and the guy in the white shirt, he's one of the members at the San Marcos. He gave up his home, or he let people use his home for the team devotionals at night. In the evenings, they had a gospel meeting. That was in Spanish, all Spanish, no translator. But in the teen devo, I'm saying teen, but it's most of the Americans would go to that devo, and he let us use his. We ended up having a Bible study with his son, and he was restored. He had been away for 3 or 4 years, and so that's good. Probably why he let us have it, so we would be there. That's Cindy on a Bible study. Last year, Cindy concentrated on the VBS, and so this year she did something different. You know, it's tough to do something different when you're comfortable. You know, if you're comfortable just teaching one class and then you want to grow, do something different. Stephanie and some little fella. Stephanie in a Bible study. Looks like Cindy, and that lady is Blanca. She was in our presentation last year. Last year she was 81. That's right. This year she's 82. I don't know how many teams have talked to her. I don't know if she'll ever. I don't know if she'll ever obey the gospel, but she has heard the word. So another team. That last year when we went on mission trip, we were out in the country. My team was, we were all out in the country, and we would walk for like 4 or 5 miles during the day, and the only time we ate was when we went back to the hacienda, and so I lost about 10 pounds on that mission trip last year. I was really hoping to do that this year. This in the city, it's like on one block there'll be 3 little convenience stores, and by convenience stores is some lady takes her window and creates a drive-through. You walk up and you can get Cokes and cookies and chips, and so we would go and have a Bible study, and then we would stop at a convenience, one of the little stores, and so I didn't lose 10 pounds this year. I think I might have gained some, but that lady right there, she had a store out of her house, and we would go there and get cookies and stuff. Ended up having a Bible study with her for 2 or 3 days. She's, right next to the church building, so hopefully they will follow up with that. And one of the studies we were doing, the lady, she sold corn, just corn on the cob. So I got some. That's our group, another Bible study. That's me operating on a pigeon. Yeah, we're there to help. So this pigeon had some kind of string wrapped around its foot. I helped it out. Did I get lost some? Did it lose some? Is that my last? Oh, I went through that pretty quick. I guess I can talk for 20 minutes now. No. We meet a lot of people, and we make friends, and we have fun doing the Lord's work, and that's good. But what we're there for is to spread the gospel. Spreading the gospel is a team. It is a teamwork. There were several baptisms this time, one of which was a young lady with the West Georgia congregation, and we're there to. Sometimes the people that we're spreading the gospel with are people that we bring with us, and that's what we're there for. We're there to seek and save the lost, as it says in Jude 23, and others saved with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garments spotted by the flesh. We're there to pull people out of the fire, to snatch them out of the fire, literally the fires of hell. Glad y'all let me talk tonight, and I'm going to do well in preacher school. You want this? What's that here?
Preaching school's gotten a lot easier since I went there.
No.
I just want to say that for the record. I'm wondering if I should tell Scott that you get to do James one chapter at a time. Maybe that'll make him feel better. We had a choice. You could do a paper or you could memorize the book. And I said, no way, I'm doing another paper. I'd rather memorize an entire book. If it's not James I'd be worried about. It's that GBI class, second year. That's what would be on my mind, I'm just saying. I may solicit Will or Blake or one of these young men over here, if you don't mind. I may get you to run to the fellowship hall and get me just a little small cup of ice water, please. Blake's volunteering. Got to volunteer and go, man. I'm excited to tell you about this trip, even though my voice is not cooperating with me. I had a couple of cough drops before services. I think that made me worse. Go figure. But anyway, Scott's given you some of the rundown. I wanted to mention just our final number. Scott did mention the 55 number. That was just the gringos, as we sometimes say. That was 55 team members. This is not including translators. I would say probably 10 to a dozen translators. So this was a large group. In fact, this was a large group for a Y.E.S. 2 campaign. It ended up working to our advantage because it afforded three or so teams the opportunity to go back into Los Campos, the area that we hit last year. As I tell people, you have San Marcos, which is kind of the city, and I'm trying to think of what to compare it to here. If we were back home, I'd compare it to Heflin and Chula Finney. But thank you so much. Draketown, there you go. Kind of like Bremen and Draketown or Buncombe or something like that, But Los Campos is the out in the country, just more like a community, whereas San Marcos is more of the city. As Scott mentioned, the houses are just right there together. But 55 team members, so it was a very large team. We had 287 doors were knocked or contacted. And then you have 615 contacts. Now, contacts count a little bit different from the doors. You may go today and knock on this door, and you talk to them a little bit. We'd like to have a Bible study. They say, man, that'd be great. All right, we're going to come back tomorrow, especially if this, Saturday. We'd go out on Saturday evening, and it'd already be evening. So we'd say, well, we don't really have time, not right now necessarily, but how about tomorrow at 2 o'clock? Okay, great. So you come back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. That counts as another contact. There may be 5 people that sit in there along with you, along with the main person that you talk to in the household. Those count as contacts. If they're of accountable age, they'll count as a contact. So 615 contacts, 284 Bible studies, a lot of Bible studies. I looked at these numbers from last year, looking at our presentation last year. The number of doors was up by about 100 compared to last year's numbers. The number of contacts was up this year by 300. So 300 more contacts, that's a good thing. And the Bible studies were up by about 40 or 50. So all the numbers came up, which would be expected with a lot bigger team, of course. The average VBS attendance was 120 for each night. And that's brought down significantly by Saturday night's numbers, because Saturday's your first night and the word's kind of just getting out. If you look at the numbers from Sunday through Thursday, it's more like 137. So 6 baptisms for this campaign, down a little bit from last year. That last year there were a dozen. But it's interesting, some things don't change from country to country. You get in the city and a lot of times there's a more hectic lifestyle, and sometimes, I don't know that it's just because of being in the city, but sometimes there's just less interest in the gospel. But there were also times when we were going out and you have other things that come into play as well, and we'll talk about some of that as we go along. There were 5 restorations this time, so when I don't recall any restorations from last year. So if you count the restorations and the baptisms, those are all souls going from being lost to being saved. You have 11 compared with 12 last year, so pretty comparable numbers. Just to give you an idea on a map where we were, you see Mexico, and then going south from there, the bright green is Costa Rica. That's where my good friend Hainer, who is also watching us, I've heard from him on Facebook Messenger. He's watching from Costa Rica tonight. And then the yellow there is Nicaragua. And then a little bit better, or at least closer up picture is to, I think I've got this. There's kind of the San Marcos area. Here's what I was looking for. A little bit closer up. I know that it's a little bit grainy, but just to give you an idea. Managua is where we fly into. When we fly into Nicaragua, that's where we enter the country. We spend one night in Managua. We get on a bus, and we go down to this general area of San Marcos. In fact, you see Masatepe on there. We went one day to Masatepe. We go to Masaya on the last day. And when all is said and done, we take a bus back to Managua, spend the night, and then people travel at various times. We had one group traveling about 1 or 2 in the morning. Then you got groups traveling early the next morning. Some groups travel the next afternoon. But that kind of gives you an idea. Scott showed you this picture, so I'll move through some of these pretty quickly. Ashlyn, this was her first trip, also first time on an airplane. I traded seats with someone because I said, I got to have line of sight on Ashlyn when this baby leaves the ground. Ashlyn did great. You see she's all smiles. When we landed, that was a little bit different story. I don't know if you can see the trepidation in baby girl's eyes there, but she, and in her defense, the plane, and Scott, you may recall this, we hit, and it was like we keeled over just a little bit. That was probably the most, I guess, frightening landing that I've not flown just a ton, but that was probably the worst one I've ever been a part of as well. But I got tickled, and I had to grab a quick snapshot of Ashlyn there as we landed a little bit rough coming into Managua. But she did great, first time flying. They loaded up the buses. This was on Saturday morning. People come in at various times. We had one group that didn't get into Sunday evening, Sunday night, I think. This was not planned. They got on an airplane. There was some kind of technical problem. So they unloaded everybody. They made them basically had to spend the night in the airport. Got on another plane. It got canceled. Something was going on with it. It was just one problem after another. But most of the groups got in at various times on Friday. Saturday, they load up these buses, and we go to San Marcos. I mentioned this morning, you saw another picture, but these are 2 different pictures of the hacienda where we stay when we're in San Marcos. And you can see the stairway going up to the upstairs. There's some extra rooms up there, and you see that little patio area where sometimes people will go out there and eat, and that leads to the front lawn where you exit the premises. There's this little pool here, and I show you that because one of the highlights of the trip for me, interestingly, was this. Nikki and Christy Berry, actually it was Nikki and Lynn, thank you. Nikki and Lynn came to me one night, and they said, hey, you got a second? You know, when anybody says that, it's kind of like something serious. And so I said, okay, sure. And they told me that Olivia had been talking to them, and she was ready to obey the gospel. Olivia and I sat down and had a short conversation, and one of the things that she said to me was, she said, I've kind of put this off and tried to tell myself that I'm just a kid. I didn't want to admit I'm not just a kid anymore, and I need to get right with God. And so it was very exciting and a great privilege for me to baptize her again. You see the daytime view of that little pool. We use that if someone ever is close by there to obey the gospel. And so that night we went out there and Olivia obeyed the gospel, and that was just a wonderful thing. And fortunately, she was able to talk to her daddy, I think, on FaceTime after that. Her mom was with her on the trip, but not her dad. When we get into San Marcos, we tell the people in the community, the Iglesia de Cristo San Marcos. Sometimes people say, I'm not sure where that is. All you had to say, the Guanacaste tree. Arbol, I think, is tree in Spanish. But you tell them it's the Guanacaste tree. Guanacaste. Hainer may have to correct me on that. But it's this tree, and you can see that is a ginormous tree. And one of the bus drivers was telling me this tree is over 200 years old. It's just everybody in the town knows the big tree. Last year Scott and I were supposed to have a squaring off under the mango tree. This year we were supposed to have a squaring off under the big Guanacaste tree. He didn't show again. I don't know. But I was thinking about that, Scott. We were teasing about the mango tree last year. But that tree it's hard to appreciate from these pictures how enormous that tree is. And it is really neat. Here's another picture of it that is at sunset, and it's just gorgeous. That is a really neat tree, and it's right there in the center of their little community, their little city. And you tell people it's the church over by the big Guanacaste tree, and they say, oh, okay, I know exactly. So many times Hainer would be talking to someone in Spanish, and I'd catch just enough to figure out he said the church by the Guanacaste tree, and every time people would be kind of, what? And as soon as he'd say that, yeah, okay, and they understand. They also hung this banner, an evangelistic campaign, from the 22nd to the 27th of July, 2017. Te Esperamos. I don't know. You have to help me with that one, Hainer. Church of Christ San Marcos. So the invitation for the community to come out to the gospel meeting. I was teasing Wesley. We were going to kind of get an idea of this, how huge this tree is. So he was kind of showing you how and Wesley's probably, pushing 6 feet? And, he can't even get his arms halfway around that. He's not just a tree hugger. He's showing you how big that tree is there. But that tree is enormous. And that's some of the roots down at the bottom of that painted area that you saw in the picture. The church building, I couldn't get a real good picture of the front of it because they had these tents up. But you get kind of an idea. I got underneath the sign just to take a picture of that, just to show you kind of an idea. Scott mentioned the stores that people have. There's one right next to the building. If you're looking at the building, you go just a little bit to the right, and there's a little, like a convenience store. But like Scott said, it's basically their home, and they've figured out, and you see they got the bars and got like the little window there. And this was a stumbling block to me throughout the entire trip because it's there and it's cheap. And Hainer kept saying, you want a Coke? I'll buy you a Coke. You want a snack? And sometimes he didn't even ask. He just come up. Here's a snack. And so they got all these little snacks. You see the Chipotle cheese, cracker type snack. You got the ranchitas, which is kind of like a Doritos type thing. They have a Coca-Cola, of course, and all these different snacks. But that lady is going to be living well for a long time from the 8 days or so that she had Gringos right next to her store with this gospel meeting going on. Saturday night, I had the opportunity and the privilege to teach what we sometimes call the teen class. It's adults and teens. It's the English-speaking class, basically. They have one class going on, one like the gospel meeting going on that is in Spanish only. And basically, anybody who doesn't speak Spanish will typically go over to what we call the teen class, but it's for everybody. This is, I believe, on Saturday. Spin leading some singing. Same day, if I'm not mistaken. Just giving you a picture of the inside of the building. Scott has showed us a picture of that as well. This is outside, I believe, Sunday morning. We ran out of room, And so we had to have overflow seating, which is, of course, a wonderful thing, a wonderful problem to have. Here's Wade preaching. I think that may be the exact same picture that you showed, Scott. So here is a picture of some of the young folks. I want to say this is on Sunday in their Bible class hour. In fact, it was, because I went over there to let them know that Bible class was over and that they could come on back for worship. Another picture of the children from that. Here's a picture of me with some of these children. I went before I left on this trip. I went to the Dollar Tree, and I guess it's been a long time since I've been to a Dollar Tree. I had gone over to Anniston to go to this member of the church who's my chiropractor over there, and I had just gone to see him. And right next door, they put in a Dollar Tree, and I forgot that everything there is $1. You can buy big packs of candy. It's $1. So I bought like $25 worth of candy. And I told Reagan, she said, "What are you doing with all that candy?" And I said, "I'm going to be a hero." And I was. They loved me. And so here I am dispensing the candy. And they would come up and they wanted to have some of the candy. And then when they had the overflow seating, they sent a lot of the kids. They said, you go sit outside so the adults could come in here and sit and listen to the sermon. And so then I went out there and sat with them. And, some things don't change from country to country. The kids will say, let me feel your hair. So they like that. The dogs also come to church in San Marcos, just like in Los Campos. You have some dogs that wander in. Here's a song we sang a lot. I meant to ask Hayner the words of this before I got up here and attempted it, but I'm gonna try it. It's the elaborate is "I will praise," I believe. Is that right? I will praise, and I will praise my Lord. It's "A mi Señor." Then the one, starting with 1, that's John. It's quoting from Revelation. John saw the group of the redeemed, and all were praising the Lord. Some were praying, others were singing, but all were praising the Lord. I believe that's right. We've heard it in English, but I hadn't heard it in a while. But I think that's pretty close, if not right. But we sang that song numerous times, and we learned it. The English-speaking people learned it, and we learned what it meant enough that we could sing it with the spirit and with the understanding. And so it was really neat to sing that song with them. There's Scott giving a devotional one morning with the pulpit that says, "Of course, Christ loves us." Senor Abdon, I love this guy. He was just a tireless servant of the Lord and as humble and wonderful a man as you'll ever meet. And he's endured a lot. He had a bad car wreck several years ago that left him. He still walks with a very significant limp. He had head trauma that he still struggles with memory, sometimes very simple memorization, even anniversary and dates like that he struggles with sometimes. But the man is on fire for God. And I loved getting to spend time with him and getting to know him. And one of the highlights of the trip was, and I believe this was the day, on Sunday, at the end of morning worship, he got up and he was gushing. And it was like a child at Christmas, and he was telling how excited they were to have their American brethren here with them. And he says, and we're so excited, and we have a special treat for you. And so he says, here's what we want to do. We want to share our special treat with you. And they sang, "God is so good" in English. And we all sang it together. And then we turned around and we all sang it together in Spanish. And I've said numerous times, I think that, I don't know what language we'll speak in heaven, but that's what it's going to be like. We'll all just unite in song and praise to God Almighty. And that was one of the neatest things. And he was, like I said, it was like a child at Christmas. He was so excited to share that with us, that they had taken the time to learn that song in English. And they were just thrilled about it. So that's some of the goings on in San Marcos. File this under weird things you see on your mission trip. This was walking down the street one day. I totally got busted taking his picture. I thought he was about to come over and punch me, but I just saw a clown walking down the street one day, and I said, Well, that's something you don't see every day, even in Nicaragua, you know. And so I took a picture of that. And then you got the creepiest truck I've ever seen, with the little doll heads on top. I have no idea. I didn't, that truck was sitting there empty. I don't ever want to meet the owner of that truck. But I just wanted to share that with you. Moving along to, you may remember this young lady from last year, Hania. Hania and Eric, they got married last year. She was thrilled when Nikki brought her some pictures from the wedding. She didn't have the capability of taking a bunch of pictures and printing those off, and so Nikki brought her some pictures, probably the only picture she's got of her wedding. She was thrilled, and there she is on the left there going through those pictures, and on the right there, of course, with Nikki. I love this picture of her and Eric. We sat down and had a quick Bible study with them. We found out they weren't attending church, and so we wanted to talk to them, and so we sat down and began to study some, and her parents sat in on the study with us, and I love this picture of them looking at the scriptures together. And here's another picture from that same day, that same study. You can see this is pretty common. You'll study with one or two, and another couple sit down, her parents, and then a friend sits down, and another friend sits down, and you just got a lot of people in a study. Next thing you know, you got a study of 10 people going on. Here's a picture similar to the one Scott had a better version of this. As you can see, the little gal that had my phone was taking the picture, got her finger in the shot up there at the top, but I kept those pictures because I thought that was cute that she had these pictures, and that was all of our group from that day's study. Here's one right before we left. We weren't sure at this point if we were going to see Hania again. She was working 6 days a week. She only had Sundays off, and so we had, you know, kind of a sad goodbye at that point, but we weren't sure when we were going to see her again. As it turns out, her and Eric, they came to services. I believe this was Monday night. We didn't know they were going to come because she was supposed to be working. She's been having some health problems, and so she didn't end up going to work. Eric was off work for some reason, or this actually might have been Sunday night because they are both off on Sunday. So I was able to get a picture with them, and then we had more. I think it was Sunday. This was when the sad goodbye took place because we thought this was it. She's going to be back at work on Monday. As I said, it turned out she had some health problems. Interesting thing with Hania and Eric, without taking up a ton of time, there was some, basically the ball got dropped, and some paperwork didn't get filed, and their wedding did not legally take place. We had done everything right, but some paperwork didn't get taken to the courthouse. And so one day during our trip, and this was one of the reasons we didn't get as much Bible studying done, one day we took off right at lunchtime, right after lunch, and we went to this city. This is Masatepe. We went to talk to the lawyer who performed the ceremony. What's going on? What happened to the paper? She says, I gave it to them, and she may have. A lot was going on that day. There was a lot of excitement, and they were baptized right after the wedding. And so she says, I gave it to you all, but it's no problem. Don't worry. I can get you what you need. So she did. She got the paperwork, and over here on the right, I showed this picture in my PowerPoint this morning. There's the marriage certificate. On the left, you see the alcaldía. That's their version of like the local courthouse. And so we had to go there and talk to them, what needs to happen. And so there was some paperwork to take care of and some late fees to pay, of course, because it's been a year. And so we took care of that and got them their wedding certificate, and we headed out to Los Campos. And you can't go to Los Campos on a Y.E.S. mission trip without having a torrential downpour at some point and having the road turn into a small river. So that happened the day we took that out there, but we went out there, and you can see the bottom right, me and Hania, we're delivering her the marriage certificate. She was excited about that. The top left is one of those taxis. If you see up in the top right, I told Stephanie, I said, you're going to have to get in one of these taxis and go for a ride at some point just to experience it. Well, she did. Me and her and Hector one day got in there. You see the bottom left, that's the view from inside that little taxi. But the top left, you can kind of see it. You can't really tell it from there, but it's like a little three-wheeler that's covered. And it's like a clown car. You can fit like 20 people in there if you really try. It's difficult sometimes, but I mentioned the money this morning, and I'll tell you the story behind that now. I knew that we had been several times in one of these taxis, especially going back and forth to courthouses and stuff, and I'd learned that it's somewhere around 25 to 30 Cordobas to get a ride in the taxi into town. So I come to Hania that day, and we've delivered this marriage certificate. We're getting ready to leave, and I hand her, I've edited it out, but the original picture of these, they're in my hand because I took a picture of them. I hand them to her, and I say, of course, she doesn't speak English, and I really don't speak Spanish, but I tried to say enough, bastante, for a taxi, para taxi. And she just started laughing. I mean, she just cracking up laughing. And so I look at her kind of funny, and I thought, I used the wrong word. I think bastante is more like when, not necessarily sufficient, but like, okay, enough. So I said, okay, I used the wrong word. And I said, suficiente para taxi. She just laughing. So I said, come on, Hainer, come over here. And I said, Hainer, I'm trying to tell her this should be enough for a taxi to get, because it was still raining some, to get her back over there because she had to go somewhere and it was a time constraint. And then Hainer starts laughing. And I said, well, somebody tell me what's going on. And he says, Chad, you gave her 5 Cordobas. The 25 is centavos. He said, that's less than a cent. And she was just laughing and saying something in Spanish, and he translates for me. She was saying, I could get about from here to that door with what you gave me. And she just thought that was the funniest thing, that I had handed her 5 Cordobas and 25 centavos, which wouldn't even amount to much of anything. But that we got a big laugh out of that. Here's Nikki leaving Hania with some Bible study tools, some Bible markers. She was so excited about that, and she was just blown away when Nikki said, no, she tried to give it back. Like, okay, I see. Maybe one of these days I'll get some markers and I can do that. And Nikki says, no, that's for you. That's for you to keep. Long story short, Hania and Eric were restored on Thursday night to faithful service, and they placed membership at the San Marcos congregation. Here's me being a hero again with the kids. They want their candy, you know. This was kind of a little game we were playing because I had crybabies. I had crybaby gum, and I was telling them seeing who can handle it. And I told them, I said, you gotta stay in there until it gets sweet or whatever. So they were having fun with that sour gum. Here's Stephanie and Tylee and Ashlyn with some of the young folks there in Los Campos. You have, that's Jose there in the picture, and he's sitting in the rocker. Oh, that's when Jency came home. Jency was Hania's sister. We had studied with her last year. She had been away. Well, she just arrived one day in the middle of one of our studies. So that was neat. We got to see her again. Jose, the studies with Hania and Eric, trying to get them back to faithful service, led into studies with her parents, which we were a little uncertain about because her parents aren't married. But they wanted to study. So we began studying with them. And here, these pictures are from those studies. I don't know who snuck this picture during the prayer, but I'm glad they did because this is one of my favorite pictures. This is the afternoon that Jose and Ivania told us they want to obey the gospel. We were still a little bit uncertain, and Jose announced to us that he understands that they are living together outside of God's command of wedlock. And he said, we will not behave as a married couple again until we have taken care of this and we are married legally and in the sight of God. But we are going to come tonight and we're going to obey the gospel and we're going to be born again. And so before we left there, we had a prayer with them. And I love that picture. Here is that night, but right before they were baptized, Jose and Ivania and Hania standing up there. They're announcing Hania and Eric's restoration and placing membership. They're also talking to Jose and Ivania before their baptism. And there's the local preacher, Abdon, who is talking to them. And here, these next few pictures are their baptism. That's Jose obeying the gospel. And then immediately following Ivania. And one of the great things of our trip actually happened about a week later. And it was really cool because when you come home from one of these trips, you come home and you're just like on a spiritual high in a sense, but then you kind of crash about a week or so later because you're missing everybody. You miss your American friends you were around, your new friends. You're missing the people there. And so you're just kind of down in the dumps a little bit. And then I got these pictures from Guillermo, who I'll show you in just a moment. And that is Jose and Ivania's wedding. So that that was cool. We were a little bit concerned about Stephanie and Ashlyn. We weren't concerned about them. I think Stephanie was more concerned than anybody. She wasn't sure how this trip was going to go. But as you can see, Stephanie and Ashlyn, they did quite well. There's Stephanie playing with Angel. This boy is his mom is a member of the local church there in Los Campos, and really cute little fella. He went around with us on most of our studies in Los Campos. But again, you can see Stephanie and Ashlyn, they did very, very well. This little girl, Linda, on the right, was in the hospital when we first got there. She came home, and we were able to get her some Pedialyte or something like that, and they were having trouble getting her to eat. And Miranda is a nurse, and Miranda told us, take her some peanut butter. And if she can take a spoonful or so of peanut butter, that'll at least get her nutrients and help her to get better. And so we did. And, there's Ashlyn in the bottom left, busted, flirting with Elvin. I'm teasing. But all of the girls liked Elvin and Agner. And they were good guys. They were really, really great guys. These two gals, you may remember them from last year. They came running up one day. We're in Los Campos, and they wanted to give us hugs because they remembered us, and it was great to see them again. This little cute girl, Genesis, is her name. I picked her up, and I was smiling at her, and she kept whispering something to me, and I said, what? She whispered something. Of course, she's speaking in Spanish, and I don't know. So finally, I'm walking over, and she's kind of about looking like she is right there, and she kept whispering to me. And finally, I said, Hainer, tell me, what is she saying? And he said, she says, I'm scared, and I want my mother. I said, okay. All you had to do is say so. So I took her back to her mama, and everything was okay. But, yes, that really happened. She's not old enough to appreciate the candy. Here's Wesley with a young child that he grew fond of. And this elderly gentleman, somebody studied with him last year and asked about him. And somewhere between last year's trip and this year, he obeyed the gospel. He is 80-something years old. He's a Christian. I don't know if you can tell, he's got a sharpening tool in one hand and a machete in the other. He was cutting grass with a machete. And this field was a lot of weeds, about, most of them were at least that high. And this was a big field. I mean, the size of probably one of our classrooms downstairs. And he's just by hand cutting it, just right up to the ground. And we came by later that day, and he had done it. Just an amazing gentleman, and very friendly, very humble. This little fella got a blow pop from Nikki. He didn't understand that you got to take the paper off that thing first. And so he's eating it, and I don't know if you can see that in the picture, but it's like running down his neck. He is wearing it. And Nikki tried to help him. And you can see in that picture, he's looking at Nikki like, why? Why are you taking my candy? What did I do? He's just distraught that she's taking his candy, and Nikki got so tickled. This is one of my favorite pictures there on the right, Nikki and this little fella, because he's just kind of like, what are you doing? You give it to me, and then you take it away. But she fixed it and gave it back to him, and all was well with the world. This lady, one day, Cindy and her group had some water, and they gave her a bottle of water. Her well had gone dry. She had family that would try to steal from her and take things from her. She grabbed the bottle of water and just chugged it. So the next day, you can see we took 2 cases of water out to her, and she was so thankful for that. That's Blanca that Scott mentioned just a moment ago, and a very, very sweet lady. And so we left her some water and then went on our way. These are the people up on the hill. This is me showing them how to properly eat a pixie stick. They would get a pixie stick and try to suck on it. And I said, you are never going to eat a pixie stick like that. And so I said, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you all another one. And so this next picture, you can see they got it. So that was a proud moment for me, teaching them how to eat a pixie stick. Here's our group studying with this lady named Aurora. Long story short, she didn't obey the gospel. She's in a tough situation with a man who will not do the right thing. And it's just a heartbreaking situation. And you just, if you think about it in your prayers, mention Aurora from Los Campos, because she wants to do the right thing, but she has polio. She has nowhere to go. And she's got a guy that's he's just not doing the right thing. He's being sorry. That's all there is to it. That's what we say where I come from. And that's just saying it like it is. This is Liliana. She obeyed the gospel last year. She's not attending faithfully now, but it's because she works on Sundays. So we're encouraging the members to try to go out on Fridays when she's off work and encourage her. And she is, it's not that she's just not interested in the Lord, but she's working. You may remember this picture from last year, me, the gringo cocinero, the gringo cook. We went by that house again, and they weren't there. A brother came out, and we just said, hey, just tell them the gringo cocinero stopped by. And Hayner told them that in Spanish, of course. And so we had just gotten a little ways down the road, and we hear hollering. And they came out, and as soon as he had said that, they didn't know who was at the door, so they just sent the brother out to kind of say, busy right now, can't come to the door or whatever. When they heard that, they came running. And they said, oh, no, y'all come back. They remembered us from last year. And so we were able to go, and we had a few different studies with them. They did not obey the gospel this time. I was hopeful that they would. They're steeped in some denominational error, and they're close, I think. One day we ran up on some JWs that were going through there, and at that point I just let Hayner take over, and it was all in Espanol at that point. And Hayner took care of that, and the JWs didn't hang around very long, and we were able to study with them. I mentioned the dresses this morning. Here they are giving those dresses to the children. They were so excited to receive that clothing. And then here is Tylee and Evangeline with those children. That's several of the children. Some of those are members. Some of those are down from Hania's place, and some of those are from right there where Carmen is. In fact, I don't see Linda in there. I don't know where Linda was during that picture. And then the last night is always one of the toughest. Saying bye, that's always the hard part. And I'm getting off of that picture because that picture on the right breaks my heart every time I see it. That's Angelina with one of the children. I think that's one of Hania's children. And that was on the last night as well. I believe that's sign language for I love you, right, Nikki? Is that correct? So several of the children had learned that from some of our people. And that's another one that gets me, Nikki and Hania. And then this is the last day before we left the hacienda. Nikki, Hayner, Stephanie, and myself. This is before we boarded the buses to go to Messiah. There's Brother Abdon and his wife. Again, I just really, really enjoyed getting to spend time with him and getting to know him. Just a great guy. Here's Guillermo. He's the point man. He's the contact down there for Latin American missions for several. I think all the preachers in Nicaragua. He's kind of the contact man for them. He is a great, faithful servant of God, and he was really diligent to, as soon as that wedding took place with Jose and Ivania, he sent me the pictures and just made my day, like I said, at a point when I was kind of bummed out about being home from this trip. And then, of course, packing up the buses. These guys, I don't know how they do that, but they do an amazing job packing all that luggage on top of those buses. And then Ashlyn's cheerful goodbye to her main man, Agner. Agner was just I remember him from last year, and he's a great, great guy. Scott showed this picture a while ago, the picture of the West Georgia people and the Bremen people, kind of wrapping things up. The trip had highs. The highs were spending time with some of my best friends in the world, Hayner and Wade. I can't think of two men I'd rather be with and spend time with, doing the work of the Lord. This is where you can find me, Hayner, and Wade most nights at this table with a cup of coffee in our hand, or else flagging down one of those employees to say, could you please make some coffee? That was kind of highs of the trip. There were lows of the trip, such as the day the coffee ran dry. Cindy was not happy. Nor was Ashlyn. We created a monster. Scott and I encouraged her to try coffee, and we created a monster. Though there were highs, there were lows, and sometimes we just prop each other up, I don't know who took this picture of Hayner leaning on me, but I guess he was tired that day, and I was happy to help hold him up. It's sort of like life, You have highs, you have lows, and sometimes we prop one another up. If you've never gone on one of these trips, it's what Christianity is all about. We are saved to serve. We are saved to go out and help others. Scott mentioned Jude 23, snatching people from the very fires of hell. There is no better feeling in life than taking the gospel to somebody. Even if they don't obey, it's a wonderful thing when they obey the gospel. Even if they don't, to tell them what they need to know to be saved. To make sure that knowledge is in their hands, but to see someone go from hearing to obeying the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is nothing like that. You go on this trip thinking, I'm going to try to do some good for these people or whatever. It will do you so much good spiritually. Talk to me, Scott, Stephanie, Cindy, Ashlyn, Brother Chris has been on these trips before. There are others here who have been on these trips. Talk to us about it. It is life-changing. It is a wonderful thing. But ultimately, it's about fulfilling what God said to do. Not just in Nicaragua, but everywhere we go, as we go, teaching and preaching the word, the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because life here is short. And eternity is long. And heaven is too wonderful and hell is too hot. We want to make sure we're right with God. We want to help others to be right with God. As we close our thoughts, are you right with the Lord? It may be that you need to come and obey the gospel of Jesus Christ, just like Jose and Ivania and some of these others. You come confess Jesus Christ as Lord and be immersed in water and have your sins washed away and added by the Lord to his church. It's the same church. The spiritual body is one, whether in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, America, China, wherever. You could be a new creature. Maybe as a child of God, you're not where you need to be. Maybe you need to rededicate yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to fulfill what the Lord told me to do, and I'm going to go and take the gospel. I'm not just talking about Nicaragua. That'd be wonderful. But I'm talking about wherever. Gospel meeting is coming up. It's a wonderful opportunity to fulfill that great commission. It is life-changing when we do what God made us to do. Not what he's making us do. He's going to give us a choice in the matter. But it's what he made us to do. You will never be happier when you do what you're made to do, and that is to glorify God and help others to do the same. If you need to get right with God, won't you come as we stand and sing?